And a very interesting, another very interesting thing is Sindhu mentioned in terms of this Ashwins. So you know that two of the devatas are very much fond of Parushni river. Can you name them? Any of you? Yeah, I mean, I will tell because I think conversations are not very. So Indra is mentioned as bathing in the Parushni river, that is the Ravi river, and as if emulating the Indra's companions, Maruts are mentioned as bathing in the Parushni river. So similarly, we have something similar like Ashwini Devatas. They are connected with the Sindhu river. They say that Sindhu river sprinkle rasa water onto the horses of Ashwin. So that means the poet is considering imagining a scenario. Imagining means he is describing a scenario of Ashwins crossing the river Sindhu through their horses, and then the water of Sindhu is called rasa water. Rasa means it can mean amrita or soma. All these thing meanings are there for rasa. And this is also helped me to discover another important finding in the book Rivers of Rigveda, which is again a puzzle for many of the researchers of the iron innovation theory as well as OIT, both sides. They were puzzled by the identification of a river named Rasa, because it's similar to just like Saraswati, even though the river is the Haryana river, people have identified it with everywhere like Afghanistan river, some people Russian river. Both side of the argument, both in the AIT and OIT, they are confused. They identified with the Volga river in Russia, some with the Afghanistan river, some with the Iran river. I looked at the data and I got it. It is the Sindhu river itself mentioned as Rasa river. So Rasa is a synonymous, it is synonymous of the river Sindhu. And I have proved it. If you read the book, I have proved it in a very kind of structured manner that Rasa river is mentioned as a kind of a boundary of your world. So it is mentioned as a river that flow through the boundary of your entire world. So the reason is during the early Ṛgvedic period, that boundary was the Sindhu river. But anything beyond Sindhu river, that was unknown to the early Ṛgvedic people. So that is why that memory of the Sindhu river as a boundary river, which is obtained during the early Ṛgvedic period of Sudas, that is what getting captured and then assimilated subsequent in part of the Rigveda, where the Rasa river is mentioned as a boundary river, a river which is far away, etc. And of course, the Puranic idea of Rasatala. Rasatala means from very far away region, which are not part of the human sphere of existence. So we say Rasatala is there. So there's basically nothing but Rasatala is nothing but the banks of the river Sindhu. And of course, the river Sindhu, when it flows through the plains, it is called Sindhu, but the word Rasa is applied to the river Sindhu for the upper course of the river Sindhu, which is flowing through the high Himalayan mountains. So the word Rasa is primarily applied to that the place where the river is flowing, like from close to the Kailas Sarovar, Manasarovar area, the river Sindhu started its origin, flows to a Tibetan plateau, which is an elevated plateau, which is considered as Vishtapa, that is Swarga, that is elevated terrain, that is called Swarga or Vistapa. So Sindhu flow through that region, then through Kashmir, to the north of Kashmir it flows, and then finally descend into the plains where the river Sarayu joins it. So till that point, whatever the high Himalayan mountainous river Sindhu is referred to as Rasa. That is one attached word attached to. But of course, the the word Rasa can attach to the river Sindhu even for the entire course of it. But more or less, it is more popular onto the upper course of the river Sindhu. So we have my book have this is one of the important solutions in the rivers of Rigveda after the identity of Sarayu river, because a lot of scholars very clearly understand that the river Sarayu mentioned in the Rigveda is different from the Sarayu mentioned in the Ramayana, that is the eastern Sarayu in Uttar Pradesh. So there is consensus about it. It's not just me, but many people. But none of the people were able to identify the river Sarayu mentioned in the Rigveda. I identified it with Haro river. And this is one of the second achievement I have is about the identity of the river Rasa river as the same as Sindhu River. So that again we will talk about Rasa in a subsequent chapter. So I will describe it more in detail. And many other identifications like Yavyavati and Haryupya, identification of that. ML Bhargava has done a lot of initial some research, but I am confirming that research of ML Bhargava that Haryupya and Yavyavati are the two rivers in Haryana which is flowing parallel to the river Saraswati and in between Saraswati and Yamuna rivers. So that is another identification, but partial credit goes to ML Bhargava for that, Haryupya and Yavyavati. And other three rivers, Anjasi, Kulasi, that is identity of Anjasi and Kulasi in the middle Rigveda with Yavyavati and Drashatvati. That is another unique achievement I have. And then the Shifa River. Shifa is also some river nobody knows. It's some local river in Haryana, that much everybody understand. But I was able to identify it with the river of Delhi, the Sahibi River. So these are the, if you look at very clear river identifications, which is uniquely found in the research work that I have done. That is one is Sarayu, that is Ṛgvedic Sarayu in the west, and then Rasa River, identity as Sindhu, second one. And then the three rivers in the Haryana, local rivers in the Haryana, Anjasi, Kulsi, and Veerapatni is obviously is a synonym of Saraswati. So Anjasi, Kulsi, Veerapatni. Okay, so that I am not counting because Veerapatni is well identified as Saraswati. So Anjasi, Kulsi, and Shifa. So five rivers. And Yavyavati and so five rivers uniquely I have identified in my book for the first time in the entire Indology. Two rivers, ML Bhargava's identification of Yavyavati and Haryupya. I have confirmed it with more data. So total 7 rivers. And of course, so many other discoveries which we can read the book and understand. So more or less, I think I covered everything related to the river Sindhu. And we have done a recap of the previous rivers and also mentioned about some uniqueness of this current research work, which is distilled into the book of Rivers of Rigveda. And this is a reason why I put the name as Rivers of Rigveda, because a lot of discoveries related to the river is mentioned there. Yeah, I promised you to show the hydrology of the river Sindhu, so I will flash it. I have to show it through the book. In my book, I will show it. You can see it. So this is it's something like this. See the kind of differences you can see. The flow of the river Sindhu in the middle Ṛgvedic period. The fourth and fifth mandala, the middle Ṛgvedic period. The river Sindhu is flowing in like slightly in the eastern side, right? This is the current course of the river. You can see. And the fourth and fifth mandala period, the river was flowing like this, slightly to the eastern side. Again, you can see Vibali coming and joining here. And then in the 10th mandala, okay, one more thing. There is, if you look at the left-hand side, you can see Mahatnu and Gomati coming and joining together. I mean, Mahatnu coming and joining into Gomati, and the Gomati coming and joining into Sindhu River. This is the middle Ṛgvedic period. And Krumu is joining directly to the Sindhu River. So Krumu is currently known as Kurram. Mahatnu, it's a kind of dried up river, so there is no big name for it. Gomati is known as Gomal River. So these two rivers are coming in and like this. So you can see here, that is the dynamics here. And here, if 10th mandala comes, you see another change happen. Krumu is coming like this. Mahatnu is joining it. Gomati is joining it. All three rivers joined together. And this is actually this is whatever current course of Sindhu, right? But earlier that was occupied by Krumu, that is Kurram River. So Kurram River was flowing through the current course of Sindhu. Like this, it will take Mahatnu and Gomati and finally it joins Sindhu somewhere here. And the Sindhu River is the same thing, same. Both in the 4th and 5th mandala and the 10th mandala. This is middle Ṛgvedic, late Ṛgvedic, where the river Sindhu was more eastern than what current flow. And today, whatever we are seeing, what happened, the Sindhu has shifted to westward. It has taken over the channel of the path of Krumu River, that is Kurram River. So because Sindhu is flowing through the Kurram River channel, earlier the Mahatnu was a tributary of Kurram, now it is a direct tributary of Sindhu. Gomati was like this. Now it is like this. So there are now three tributaries like this currently for Sindhu. If you look at here, 10th Mandala time, it is only one tributary. The other two tributaries are joining Kurram. In the fourth Mandala, it is more or less like today's situation. Okay, slightly the Mahatma and Gomati are two river joining together and joining here. Two tributaries. So in the fourth and fifth, there are two tributaries. 10th Mandala, there is one tributary. And now there are three tributaries. So there is very high, very highly volatile dynamic. I mean, it's not happening in a day or in a decade, but happens in a matter of centuries. And this is the kind of dynamics you can see similar. The river. I'm talking about the dynamics of the Vibali River. That is the Jalam River. I'm talking about the dynamics of the river, this Sindhu River in the book, hydrological or geological dynamics of the rivers. And lastly, I'm talking about the dynamics of the Sarayu River. That I will take up later in the subsequent chapter on Sarayu. Here you can see that I'll take up next session will be about Sarayu River. So I will talk about the dynamics of the river Sarayu. The river Sarayu also similarly, it has got two tributaries, and later the two tributaries abandoned river Sarayu and directly joined the Sohan River. The Sohan was actually there was RGA and Sushoma, two rivers were directly flowing to the Sarayu River earlier, and Sarayu was a very powerful, very strong river in the fourth Mandala, fifth Mandala period. So by the time of 10th Mandala, these two tributaries deserted the Sarayu River, started directly joining the Sindhu River. So Sarayu become means a very temporary river, like a seasonal river. It's almost dried up. That is the situation in the 10th Mandala. That is why I don't find the Sarayu in the Nadi Sukta. So that is for the next session. I will detail it later. So here I end my talk. So we can maybe remaining time we can discuss about something if any questions are there.
Hi, sir. Good evening.
Ah,
So, just uh, just curiosity. You said the elevated areas, were called the Swarga.
hmm.
So, can we assume that the opposite was Patala, where they were below something?
So I think mostly the Patala is a different concept. That is because just like today we excavate and you find out archaeological remains, right? So today you excavate Sinali, in Sinali you excavate, you get a chariot underneath. So what will be the ancient people think when they excavate and found something or some archaeological remains? So they think that there are people living underground. So that is the kind of idea. That is how the idea of some asuras living underground. That kind of a concept developed because of that. So even in the Mahabharata, there it is mentioned about mining. So, for example, that is coming in the upcoming third book, which is going to be released in January. There is after the Kurukshetra war, the treasury was empty. Then Yudhishthira and everybody was very anxious, and then said there is some wealth hidden in the Himalayas because of some earlier king who were there, and you can go and excavate it. That exact word used is excavation. So Khanan. So there they went there into Himalayas. They dig up the area and they got a lot of vessels, everything, etc. So at least from the period of uh, this Mahabharata Kurukshetra war, our people, our contemporary people are digging up the soil and they're getting some ancient remains. So that means at least one instance we get it from Mahabharata. Similarly, in the Ramayana, Sagara is mentioned as digging, etc. But anyway, he didn't get anything. It was he basically was saying that finding a horse, he is digging the earth, etc. So digging, that is excavating, is an important activity that is mentioned a couple of times in our itihasas. So some people excavate and they get something remain in that. Automatically, they think that there were people living there, like the asuras or nagas are living underneath. That is a concept. So that is the idea about patala, etc. But they are not directly opposite. Like of course you rightly think in that line, but it is natural to think that. But uh, Vishtapa is a word. Vishtapa is a word. It's something. It means elevated areas, elevated regions. You can translate it as plateau also. In geological terms, if you can say Vishtapa is plateau, but in religious terms, it means Swarga, heaven, because heaven is called Vishtapa. It's synonymous of Swarga. So that is why. And but all the Swargas are not Vishtapa. For example, Haryana region also is mentioned as Swarga, like Vara Prithivya. That is because that was the ancestral region of almost all the dynasties, like Ikshwakus or Bharatas or even Yadavas. Everybody's homeland is that Vara Prithivya region between Drishadvati and Saraswati. So that region is divinized, and that region was considered as no, Swarga. That is why we say that in Kurukshetra war, when people die, whoever dies in Kurukshetra automatically reaches Swarga, because uh, it is having a philosophical or religious meaning, but it also geographically, Kurukshetra itself is Swarga. So when you die there, you are in Swarga. So that's what. So Swarga, of course, it can mean an ancestral land, like your homeland. That is like Janmabhoomi Swarga. That is another terminology we see right in our Itihasas, in Puranas. Janmabhoomi, the place you are born, your native place, you considered as Swarga. That is more or less true for all our Bharatas and Ikshvakus, etc. So Kurukshetra they consider as Swarga their native, their homeland. And any elevated terrain also, because of that elevation, because you can see from the bottom of Himalayas, you can see whatever elevated terrains are like clouded, the clouds will be below. If you in the Himalayas, anybody can be in the Uttarakhand or anywhere in the foothill of the Himalayas. When they look at the Himalayas, the cloud layer will be somewhere in the middle of the Himalaya, and then still the upper part of the Himalayan mountains will be above the clouds. So this is why it is called the Vishtapa, that is Swarga. So they will say the Indra is living in that Swarga. You see, it's above the clouds. Natural. I mean, that kind of an expression is quite natural and realistic also.
Yes, sir. And also, I think there was one theory that Bhargav is because most of our Rigvedic geography is with northwest side, central northwest side.
Ah.
I mean, so affluent areas were called Swarga. But the one theory is that below the Vindhyas, whatever would be there is the Patalas. I don't know if that theory is right or not, but because not much was known about it, and it wasn't as affluent as the northwest.
Yeah. That is also like, for example, this is a migratory related kind of pathala. Whatever you mentioned is some like moral correct, but it's a late Rigvedic phenomena. So, for example, there is a river called Vaitarani. Today also it is known as Vaitarani in Orissa. And there was some taboo, like for example, the Brahmanas who were living on the Indo-Gangetic plain never crossed the Vaitarani river. They say that after crossing the Vaitarani to the south, it is Patala. So this is also, and you can see that expression in the Mahabharata when the Brahmanas were following Arjuna, and Arjuna, after the Vangadesha, he decided to go southwards. So he crossed the Vaitarani river. So then the Brahmanas said, "We cannot go follow you from here onwards. So you can continue your journey." So this is actually late Rigvedic in the Itihasic in the Mahabharata period that kind of concept emerged. And if you there is another there is another pathala I have identified in the that is it's little more earlier. Because I mentioned, because this Rasatala is identifiable with the Sindhu river valley, because Rasa is the river Sindhu itself. So the Rasatala basically could mean the regions to the west of Sindhu, which is unknown to the Vedic the people in the Haryana region. So there is anything to the west of Sindhu is unknown to them, and so they will have the similar kind of they will consider it something like a magical land. See, if things are unknown to you, you start fantasizing about it. So that is why the regions to the west of Sindhu was the oldest Rasatala, because Sindhu is Rasa, so the region around Sindhu is Rasatala. So similarly, when you look at there are certain patterns emerging. So then there is a Patala, because there is some cities named in the southern part of the Sindhu, the southern course of Sindhu. There is a even a city named Patala is there. So that entire region to the western side is what we call it as the Rasatala or Patala, etc., which are actually related to the regions in the along the river Sindhu. That was the oldest reference to the Patala kind of concept.
So any connection, sir, with like when you say in Ramayana in the Uttarakhand that Sita actually went to Rasatala, in the end. That's what
Right.
is
There, because in the Uttarakhand I have studied, but there is no mention of the Rasatala there. It is like Bhutala. It went into earth. So if the word Rasatala is used there, of course you are telling right. But in the Uttarakhand, Sita, what she went is to the ground. And there is a lot of interpretation to it. I mentioned in the book Geography of Ramayana, which means one of the meaning is that Sita is cremated instead of Agni Dagdha. Like there are two traditions existing in the Ṛgvedic period. Even in the Rigveda, there are suktas, funeral hymns I mentioned. So funeral, some of them are Agni Dagdha, that is cremation. Another is Anagni Dagdha, that is not cremating using Agni. So those there are certain people who are cremated by Agni, others are just buried under the earth. So there are different burial rituals. So typically, it could the Uttarakhand's situation that Sita went to earth could mean she was buried after death. She was buried compared to getting cremated. That is one interpretation. And of course, so many other interpretation is there. Sita gave up the right to be the queen of Ayodhya. That is what she gave up. So she become back to the her original state. That is a woman, a baby born from earth. That is like the lower levels of the society. So there are so many meanings, but I have considered it as a burial ritual. That is what, because she is mentioned as sitting in a chair, in a simhasana along with the goddess earth, and both of them went under the earth. So this is a typical ritual that is prevalent in many part of the India, where the dead body is seated in a kind of a throne kind of thing, and they are put garlands, everything, and then they are buried. So they are buried with all honors. So that is why the dead body is made to sit in a chariot, in a throne, and then a big means a big opening is created in the earth, that is for burial, and along with this throne, with all the garlands, everything, with the they are buried. So this is another indication that that is the kind of some kind of burial ritual like that was used for Sita when she died. That could also be the meaning.
right, sir. Just one more thing is that the people who lived beside Sindhu, I mean, I am assuming that's why they were called Hindu. The people who were living near
Ah,
Sindhu and they became Hindus. So I'm just wondering that Sindhu being on the side that it is, which is outside the boundaries of today's Bharat, is there anything in their literature, in their scripture, maybe Avesta, maybe in the Methani or anywhere where they are mentioning Hindus in any kind of way?
correct. See, now whatever I mentioned in today's talk about the regions to the west of Sindhu is the Resatala, which is like then they made it fantasize it, etc. The same thing happened people who live in the western side of the Sindhu, right? So, for example, I mentioned like after Dasarajna battle and similar battles earlier to Sudas, like the battles of this Manthada, one of the earliest to repel the Dasyus to the western side. So many sequence of battles happened, and a large number of people went westwards, and they formed their own culture. So the Iranian, the Avestan, the Persian, and the Iranian Zoroastrian culture is like that. So they settled in Iran, and from that vantage point, they looked at India. They basically called everybody living to the east of Sindhu River as uh, they call it the Hindus. Basically, they will, when they pronounce Sindhu, they will pronounce it as Hindu. Basically, so Sindhu River, they call it Hindu River. And whatever identification that we got as Hindu is basically because from the Western point of view, Western means not the European, but I'm saying the Zoroastrian, the Avestan speakers, the Persians. So they settled, then they formed their own civilization. Their Persian civilization is a great civilization. Right? Even though they became enemies to us, They are great civilization with their own methodology of warfare or everything. So that when they become powerful civilization, they mapped the Indian people as Hindus. So that is a Western, that is a perspective from the Western side of Sindhu to the people of Eastern side, and that became our identity. And in the whatever Rigveda, what I mentioned, our perception of people to the Western side of Sindhus is basically these terminologies like Rasa, Tala, etc. Is that one?
Right, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes. So that's and it's very kind of interesting, like how the other culture views you. So we have viewed the other culture, and similarly, the Western side people also viewed our culture. So there's a reflections happening in both sides. And of course, when I say the Anavas migrated to the West, 50% went westward, the 50% stayed with us. That also we need to say. So they are the Gandharas, they are the Madras, they are the Kekayas who decided to stay along with us. In fact, they were not trying to stay along with us, but they were living in their own territory. Like they defended any kind of push to move westwards. So they stay put. They stay put in that territory, and they become the Gandharas. They became the Kekayas, Madras, Sindhu, Sauvira, Shivi, all this. But unfortunately, after 1947, they became the Pakistanis, like that.
So, sir, so who is Ahura Mazda?
Yeah. So the identity, like for example, among the Avestan spiritual leaders, one of the spiritual leader became the head there, the highest level. Ne? So for Ahura Mazda, if you translate it to Sanskritam, it is Asura Metha. That is the Mazda means Metha. Metha means intelligence. So Ahura Mazda, there is one interpretation is that it is a kind of a council, that is a Asura council, which is a group of people who are considered as the head or the Metha or the intellectual group. That is the Asura Metha or Ahura Mazda. So it's not one person but multiple people deciding the rules of the new religion, the Western Zoroastrian religion. Second is that because of the way, this is my own personal my own theory about the Asura Mazda, because the even though we say that the Ṛgvedic religion and the Zoroastrian religion are born like sisters, there is a big problem with the Zoroastrian religion. Nothing to do with our current Persian or Parsis, because Zoroastrian religion is a Parsi religion, but I don't held it against today's Parsis. But if you look at the Zoroastrian, the Parsi religion, there is a big problem with negativity. Negativity in the sense, in the Rigveda, the Rigveda is not written or authored in the form of hatred to anybody. There are battles happening. So in the battle, one group will win, another group will lose. But the entire Rigveda is not written in the form of a hatred manual. Whereas the Avestan text, if you look at the Vendidad, there is a tremendous amount of hatred that is towards Indra and Indra worshippers. So Indra is definitely described as Deva there. And the term Deva means a demon, means the evil people. And the term Asura means divine and great people, good people. So their terminology itself, they have twisted. Twisted means from their point of view, they have made it like that. Ahura means good, Deva means bad. And Indra is the head of all the devas. He is vilified and made a very hostile, evil character, everything in the Avestan text. So this hatred is a big problem. So this is the first world's, at least available today, the recorded first religion which has a lot of elements of hatred to another people. So they will say that anybody worshipping Deva, you need to bind them, you have to burn them alive. All these things are mentioned in the Avestan text, the Venkidai. So when I look at it, there is one character in the Puranas who says that is Hiranyakashipu. So Hiranyakashipu says anybody who is not worshipping me, any other god other than me, they will be like burned alive. They will be drowned into water, pushed down from mountain tops, burned in oil, etc. No, all the cruel things are mentioned by Hiranyakashipu. And his own son violated that, and he decided to kill his own son also. And the same thing you can see in the Zoroastrian text, like They have hinted at anybody worshipping Indra will be burned alive or nothing, burned alive or drowned. No, whatever the this Hiranyakashipu mentioned about punishment for the people who worship Vishnu or Indra, the same thing is mentioned in the Avestan text hinted at for anybody who is worshipping Indra like that.
Very interesting, sir.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is a kind of that is why I have made a connection of Ahura Mazda with Hiranyakashipu. And there is this Persian is the template based on which the Jewish religion is formed, because there was a Zoroastrian Persian occupation of Israel region, and even the Persian king gave asylum to some Jewish religious people. So they copied the some of the elements of the Zoroastrianism, and then they formed the Judaism. And in the Judaism, one of the you can see some problem, like for example, the idea of the God asking to sacrifice his son. The Jewish God asked the Abraham, no, to satisfy me, you need to sacrifice your son. And you see, there is an uncanny reference relationship to whatever this Hiranyakashipu was doing, right? He was trying to kill his son. It was not a real sacrifice, but killing of his own son. That Hiranyakashipu was ready to kill his own son, and there is this Jewish God asking his devotee to kill his son. So this there is a kind of a consciousness signature there. You can even see that.
Yeah, yeah. So just I'm just continuing on this, that if Judaism came from here
Yeah.
and Judaism came from here, would it actually kind of, how would it correlate with Jesus?
No, no. I'm not saying Judaism came. The Judaism came because that claim is made by so many people with the shallow research, etc. Basically, the Zoroastrian went from here. So maybe we can say the Zoroastrian, the Avestan speakers were in Punjab, the Indian side and Pakistan side of Punjab, along Chenab River. They migrated to Iran, and the Iranians influenced the Israel. So there is no direct connection between Judaism and Vedic tradition. It is like whatever rejected by the Ṛgvedic tradition, that becomes the Avestan tradition. And they went westward and they become strong as a religion. They are a Zoroastrian religion, and they have a lot of kings like Xerxes and Cyrus. And these people were very powerful kings, so they defeated so many places in the western side, like as far as Israel and Egypt. And then they influenced the Egyptian and mostly the Israelis Jews, because they were very weak people that time. And the Iranian Zoroastrian kings give some asylum for the Jewish people. And while they were living in Babylonia and such places, they get these ideas about the Zoroastrian religion. And on the basis of that, they created the Judaic religion. So you can see the connection. There is a lot of buffering happen, right? First of all, Vedic religion rejects some certain ideology, and the rejected ideology become popular in Iranian territory. And these Iranian people become big civilization, and then start influencing the Israel side, and then Judaism is formed. Because this is the correct sequence. Because this is a direct contrary to some of the claims like the Jewish or the Yehudas, etc., which there is no, I don't see any kind of such kind of connections. But of course, there is a trade relationships, because Yadavas were in the western side in the seaport. They have trade relationship with the Arabian cities, as well as even Egyptian and Israeli cities. So there can be trade relationships with there's a lot of other civilizations in Arabia, African continent, seashore, Egypt and Israel and Greece and Rome. So there is some connections, but it's not very strong enough to say that a group of Yadavas become Jews. That is a very wrong, very shallow kind of a research.
Right, so thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions we can close?
So why did the Sindhu River effectively become a boundary for the Vedic civilization? What was the cause of that?
Yeah, if you look at my previous talks, I mentioned that earlier they were confined to the Varaprithvya. That is the between the rivers Drashatvadi and Saraswati, that is the northern Haryana region. So at that time, anything far away like Sindhu is unimaginable for them. Then later on in the early Ṛgvedic period, you see the first instance of them crossing the river, Punjab river, like the confluence of Vibhas and Sudadri via Satluj, the Vishwamitra's army crossing the river, the army of Sudas led by Vishwamitra crossing the Punjab rivers. That happened in the third Mandala period. And in the seventh Mandala, Vasishta, as a priest of Sudas, issued two battles, one in the Yamuna, that is in the eastern side, another in the Parushni, the Ravi River, that is the Indo-Pakistan border. So in three mandalas of Ṛgveda, the early Ṛgvedic period, three mandalas, 6, 3, and 7, they were having expansion only up to the India actually. They almost stopped at the India-Pakistan border. And in the middle Ṛgvedic period, it expanded further, right? And the first reference to the Indus River comes in the middle Ṛgvedic period in the fourth mandala. So somewhere in the fourth mandala only they have reached the horizon of Sindhu River. So this particular Sindhu River as a boundary of the non-world, this kind of understanding emerged in the early Ṛgvedic period. Starting from the middle Ṛgvedic period, they even crossed the Sindhu River. So that particular notion got diluted, etc. But this is still continued. Like for example, you will have some experience in some period, and then it becomes part of your folklore, etc. Right? So this entire thing about the Sindhu river being a boundary river, even though after crossing the Sindhu river, starting with the fourth mandala, fifth mandala, we have western side of the Sindhu river, tributaries to the west of Sindhu river, as I mentioned, from fifth mandala onwards. Even then, that earlier idea that Sindhu is a boundary continued. That is what it continued in the middle Ṛgvedic and even the later Ṛgvedic period. One another example is about Gandharvas, right? See, the earlier, just like the Gandharvas, also like they were to the west of the Sindhu river, and I mean some of them to the east up to Takshashila, but mostly in the Gandhara region. Again, that was considered as an enigmatic place. Later in the Mahabharata, they are straight away mentioned as Gandharas. Earlier, whoever is considered as Gandharvas, they are now considered as normal people. Shaguni, the Gandhari, all these people are considered as normal people. But there, from the Ṛgvedic period, they will be considered as Gandharvas. Of course, the deification and the current Puranic ideas about Gandharvas also emerge later. But even then, that surprise element loose. But still, they continue to be there is another that the pre-existing folklore of Gandharvas as some divine being continued in the Mahabharata period, in the Purana period. Even now, we say that some woman behaving in a different way. We call that Gandharva has abducted her. So that tradition continues. So even though we are now we have crossed all the boundaries, even Afghanistan also we crossed. Still, that tradition of Sindhu as a boundary river, which is etched in the minds of people in the early Ṛgvedic period, continues. That's all about it. Okay, I think we can close today.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, let's all wind up the session by chanting the Shanti mantra. Om Lokaah Samastaah Sukhino Bhavantu. Lokaah Samastaah Sukhino Bhavantu. Lokaah Samastaah Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.